Rick, thank you for your kind introduction. Someone recently said that you started talking about the need for things to change for women in this country over 40 years ago. You were clearly a very enlightened first grader. And that this perspective has influenced all the actions you have championed as you gained power and influence at Scotiabank. Your presence and your remarks this evening prove the point yet again. Thank you for your support and all you do for Catalyst. Good evening, everyone. I'm delighted to welcome you to this special evening and to congratulate and thank Claude Dussault, Jane Allen, Anne-Marie Hubert, and Gord Nixon for being role models that we celebrate and seek to emulate. I would like to acknowledge the generous support of our sponsors, BMO, PricewaterhouseCoopers, Scotiabank, Rogers, and our conference host from earlier today, CIBC. Thanks to Draft FCB for their inspired work on tonight's dinner video. Didn't you love it? To the Catalyst team, led by Emily Pomeroy and Jessica Dolmer, who have worked so hard to make this event a highlight of Canada's business calendar, thank you and congratulations for all your hard work and success tonight. And to Eileen Lang and Jim Turley, who made being here at this celebration a priority, despite the many challenges that they and their families and our colleagues in the United States are facing as a result of Hurricane Sandy and a rather important political event that they need to be home for tomorrow. I also want to take a moment to pay tribute to our dinner host, Bill Down. In a few minutes, Bill will return to this stage to present the awards to tonight's honorees. He's chosen to give and not receive recognition, yet I know Bill to be a catalyst for change. He is a champion of women in boardroom diversity, someone who truly believes that the strength of his company and the success of his leadership are measured not only by a balance sheet, but by the people he inspires, the causes he commits to, and by the strength and diversity of his team. Thank you very much, Bill. I'm also delighted to join with others in welcoming Alex Johnston to her role as Executive Director of Catalyst Canada. In many ways, tonight marks a passing of the torch as Alex assumes leadership of Catalyst's mission in Canada and prepares to take my place on this stage next year. So please, excuse me if I'm feeling just a little nostalgic. Some of you know that I joined Catalyst more than 6 years ago. I had just returned to work after completing treatment for breast cancer when a former colleague took me to lunch to see how I was doing. When I told her that the experience has caused me to reevaluate all aspects of my life, including work, she asked if she could give my name to a recruiter who was leading a search for a nonprofit organization focused on the advancement of women. I thought that's something that's aligned with my values. That lunch was on a Friday afternoon. On the following Monday, I learned that this search was for someone to lead Catalyst Canada. I had worked for 2 Catalyst member organizations and was familiar with the research, but knew little about the Canadian operations. So I did my homework, went home that night, and told my husband, there's no way they'll hire me. I listed for him in some detail the reasons why I wasn't the right fit, and said nothing about the reasons why I was. Left to my own devices, I would never have applied for the position. But advice from one of my sponsors helped me to think about my experience differently. 3 days later, I essentially had the job, and the rest, as they say, is history. I was reminded of how differently my story could have ended when I met an executive at the Catalyst Europe CEO Summit. He was new to his role as chief executive and told me of his surprise when very few women applied for positions in his restructured leadership team. So I asked him what happened. The short answer? he decided to take action. Instead of assuming that the women in his company were not qualified, ambitious, or committed enough for the job, he spoke personally to high-potential women. He talked about the company's culture and commitment to diverse leadership and encouraged them to apply. His actions were deliberate, strategic, and intentional. He did not leave talent development to chance, to a random conversation over lunch, or the recommendation of a highly placed sponsor. He knows that men are more likely than women to benefit from sponsorship, and that it's not a lack of ambition that holds women back. He knows that some women may underestimate the value of their skills and experience, as I did. And that doesn't mean that they are less competent than the men that are being promoted ahead of them, but it does mean that they're different. He knows that differences matter, and that the most effective leaders are those that get the best out of diverse teams. He knows that aligning his business strategy with his talent strategy is not a philanthropic effort, it's a model for growth. He knows that when women succeed, other women succeed, and so do men, families, communities, and economies. Muhtar Kent, chairman and CEO of Coca-Cola and a member of the Catalyst Board of Directors, has called women the fastest growing economic force in the world. I saw this firsthand when I met executives from Kirloskar Brothers, a global manufacturer of water pumps with 6 facilities in India. One of those plants is run almost entirely by a group of women with grade 8 education who were actively recruited by the company and given technical training. That plant outperforms all of the others on every indicator. And importantly, the women working there have risen out of poverty to improve the quality of life of their families and communities. But more than this, what's motivating that company to seek out women leaders is the compelling impact that women are having on the performance of their company and the competitiveness of their country. Yet the reality is that women remain a growth reserve around the world, not only in emerging markets, but perhaps surprisingly here in Canada, where research from RBC found that personal incomes would grow by $168 billion annually if we had identical labor market outcomes for men and women, which we don't, and we won't, unless leaders replace hope as a strategy with action. That's the message in the stories I've shared with you tonight and in the examples of our 4 remarkable champions. Each chose to act with intention, looking for talent in unexpected places, seeing potential in women and men who may look different or sound different or think differently than the established norm. Understanding that in a world where differences make all the difference, the status quo is simply not sustainable. Yet as powerful as these role models are, change will only come when leaders are no longer considered remarkable because they choose to champion diverse talent. Change will only come when the actions of leaders like Claude, Jane, Anne-Marie, and Gord are viewed as common practice, expected competencies of leaders managing diverse teams in diverse workplaces in an increasingly diverse world. And so as you reflect on their example and think about your own leadership, I'd ask you to look around this room, to look around your office, your leadership team, and your boardroom table, not only at the people you see, but at the people you don't see. Then choose to be a mentor, a sponsor, a champion for the unlikely candidate. Commit to a simple, intentional act that may change the course of a woman's career and become a defining moment for your company and for you as a leader. Thank you very much.